Hello, I'm Isaac,
Hi, I'm Faith.
and welcome to
The We
We Didn't
Didn't
Plan
Plan
This
This podcast.
podcast.
We really didn't plan this.
So, this is the first episode today,
Mm,
in hopefully a long series of
mm,
yapping sessions where we unpack everything from side questing to careers
mm.
to our own personal stories. And hopefully, if time permits, we want to invite a nice, colorful range of guests from all industries, all ages, with all their stories to share a little bit more with our audience about how we, two young people in our 20s, are navigating a very, very big world of uncertainty.
So let's dive right in.
Before we start yapping a little bit more, I guess we want to tell a little bit more about our own stories. And let's start off with yours. So
Okay,
you,
sure.
to the general public and to all the fans, you are the very long time writer of a blog called Chasing Faith and
And love.
Hope. And love,
Love.
sorry, okay.
Close
Chasing
enough.
faith and love. Okay. So I guess my first question to you is, what are you chasing these days?
Oh, okay. So I am chasing a lot of things, probably too many things. I mean, including this podcast. So these days, I'm now working as a locum GP. I do blogging on the side. I'm trying other side quests like content creation, singing, arts and craft, writing a book, lots of other fun stuff. Yeah. What about you, Isaac?
Well, that's a lot. I tried to keep track of it on my fingers, but
Yeah.
I ran out of fingers, which is a good thing, right? So, I guess I could call myself a fellow healthcare colleague. I'm a
Mhm.
very, very junior doctor right now.
Mhm.
Finished med school not too long ago, but we are actually the same age. Fun
Yeah,
fact.
we're both born in 1997.
Yes, a year of the ox
Yeah,
apparently.
which makes us almost 30 next year.
Yes, big three.
Yeah,
Some
let's
people's.
not think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've done a lot before hitting the big three.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say a lot. It's just my confused, quarter life crisis, self navigating
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I actually came into the profession, you can call it, a little bit later because
Mm-hmm.
I came into it as a graduate. I had
Yeah.
a first degree before that. And since I like to make self destructive decisions and torture myself, I entered medicine at the not very tender age of 24. So
Mm.
that's where I'm at right now. Outside of medicine, I've been involved in education for the past between 8 to 10 years, depending on how you spin it.
Whoa,
I've
8 to 10 years, that's a really long time.
decent
Wait,
amount
so
of
like
time, right?
before
Yeah.
you start, like after army or before army or like when?
Well, for legal reasons, before and after
Okay,
army.
yes.
Not at all
Yeah.
during army,
Yeah, not at
ever.
all for legal
Ever.
reasons. Yep.
But I mean, like all A level students do, started tutoring a little bit back in
Mm.
the day.
Wait, for real? Wait, we were in the same batch. Like, I feel like none of my friends were tutoring. You were definitely more entrepreneurial than the rest of them, than the rest of us.
I just had too many travel plans after A
Mm.
levels.
Mm.
And also because you have this forced period of purgatory
Mm.
between NS and graduating, then you
Yeah.
just do every bunch of stupid things you can think of. I
Mm.
remember the hats I wore included being a personal trainer for a while. I also
Wow.
interned at this little travel startup that I just went to sleep every
Mm.
day for like the whole afternoon. But then it was quite interesting. It was one of those ideas where you go to the airport and then they
Mhm.
just give you a currency and they give you a air ticket and you go to any country that you want.
Oh, yeah.
So that's quite interesting.
I feel like I've seen some content from that.
Yes. I don't know if they're still around, but interesting
Yeah.
concept. But education.
Mm.
As I moved along throughout the years, obviously I was neither smart nor committed enough to teach tuition consistently. So back when I was in uni, I started dabbling a little bit in the education consulting and mentorship side of things. So it was more along the lines of much older students and things like personal branding, interview coaching, things like that. So I mean, these were all very good part-time side hustles when I was in uni. I was abroad for my undergrad education.
What did you study when you were undergrad?
It's this other very masochistic degree called law.
Yeah, so this year we have a lawyer and a doctor.
No,
This
no.
isn't some overachiever on what's your next side quest going to be? Becoming an astronaut?
Space agency, apparently.
Yeah, astronaut.
They just created one. That's what everyone wants to be, my full self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So I guess for that, I guess it started off as like a very much hourly, tutoring kind of thing. Then when I was back in Singapore, I realized that, perhaps this is something I want to grow a little bit because it's quite an interesting industry. Like it's not just about like, help people do their SATs or study for their LNETs or whatever acronym standardized as it is, right? So it's a much bigger industry that involves working with clients across a longer period, building profiles and personal brands and stuff like that. So I was with a company locally for a little while, had a promotion, thanks to their good graces. And then after that, left together with some of my former colleagues to start my own little outfit. So you can call this the side quest chamber over here, but this is the setting where some of these early entrepreneurial dreams were made. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, so we're actually filming this in his office. Cool, right? Like which house officer has time to work like 70, 80 hours a week and still run a side hustle and come and film this podcast with me on a weekend?
It's all the credit, it goes to my very, very amazing team, one of whom is working in the office right now, actually. So which gives me the time to come out and say stupid things on YouTube or whatever channel you're looking at.
For us to start yapping.
So I hear that we've been talking about the professional side of things. I guess there's a lot to unpack, right? But let's talk about the small, tiny things we do to keep ourselves alive. You mentioned things like arts and crafts and dancing and singing and somersaulting and backflipping.
And going to space next.
Yes. What sort of things do you do for fun, Dave?
Oh, for fun. Okay, honestly, I'm a bit of a homebody, so I'm an introvert and INFJ. So I enjoy a lot of like me time and alone hobbies. So like, okay, not very exciting Netflixing. I like reading books to get inspiration for my writing. So like every month I force myself to write like a monthly blog post. I mean, honestly, my blog feels like my baby. I started it in 2016 by accident. I realized that there was no one writing about like how to get into Singaporean med schools, but I felt like a lot of juniors were asking for it. Kind of similar to how you also identified that gap in the market. And I was like, okay, we might, since I'm in it, I might as well like, give people information so they know what kind of hell they're getting themselves into. Yeah, I can take hell now that I'm out of the system. I feel like back when I was in the system, my writing was a little bit more restrained. Because I mean, I was scared that obviously someone will see and like, I don't know, not let me graduate and finish housemanship and like screw off to the private sector. So yeah, but like over time, somehow writing became a really big hobby and source of comfort for me. Like I would post blog posts on the 25th of every month, which I still do because that was the day that we started housemanship for my batch. So like every time I posted it, it was like, okay, one more month down for our bond. So it's like sort of just, counting down and coping mechanisms for myself and my readers who are also going through the same situations. Yeah.
Wow, 25th is a milestone date. Then we are today's the 8th.
Not due anytime soon. Yeah.
So and you're not just saying this about yourself. The reason why I even got in touch was because of the blog. So fun fact, I actually long before I reached out, before I even came into medicine, your blog was one of the reading pleasures that I had.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, before I even decided I should put in an application, I read your blog like quite a lot. I hope I don't sound like a crazy fan right now.
Wait, did I write enough to scare you off? What are you doing here?
Yeah, I guess you failed to convey that intended message.
Okay, I failed. Sorry to all the people I failed, especially you.
And what I really liked about your blog was that you wrote it in a very honest way. I think there's a lot of content these days that is quite extreme, right? Like there's either people who over glamorize or people who over criticize. But I think as you wrote about things like your med student days, I remember you had the whole series that was like M1, M2, M3.
Yeah, like everybody is like reminding people, hey, we're still alive. This blog is active, but not that active. But
exactly.
At least you know what you can look forward to as like a junior reading it.
Yeah, and I mean there's like a real community, I suppose, that you built around it.
And we're cozy, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think so the reason why we didn't plan this is that actually about a year ago, I reached out to you to hope that you could give a little bit of a sharing and a bit of a scare.
Yes. Was it correct. I think was it?
Correct. Yeah, something to that effect. Yeah. Some of my juniors or something lah. And then fate, as fate would have it, we reconnected this year. Yes. And I think we have a lot more to talk about at the pace things are going in our
because for context, you are a house officer, like you just started. So that's why now he's going through all the stuff that I was writing about. So we can all trauma bond together here. This is a safe space.
And while there is the trauma to bond over, there's also bonds that are...
Yeah, there's good bonds.
Yeah, there's good bonds. There's good bonds, there's financial bonds, there's trauma bonds.
Yeah, the financial bond is the biggest one.
So I mean with that blog, right, I've been really curious, like how do you keep yourself to committed to a writing schedule? It's evolved to have a lot of different personal brands as well, right? You have
Yeah.
at some point your identity was a med student, and then
Mm-hmm.
a junior doctor, and then a junior doctor venturing out, then an entrepreneur. Okay, so I'm gonna stop counting,
Yeah.
but you get the gist. How has the trajectory of the blog evolved across the past few years?
Yeah, so I guess also just to quickly recap, like basically where I came from and where I am now. So I think 2016, I started med school, graduated in 2021. Yeah, and then back then the blog was not super active. It was just like maybe a couple posts here and there, a little bit of med life, a little bit of traveling, and some introspection. And then when I started housemanship, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to cope? The months are passing so slowly. I'm like, okay, at least I should write about it. So if I write about it, I get the feelings out. Because I mean, my therapist said that if like whatever works. So I found writing to be a great source of comfort. And I was like, surely I'm not the only one feeling this way. If I write about it, I can hear advice from seniors who've been through it. At least people know I'm struggling too, and maybe they'll resonate to some extent. So as I posted like these monthly posts, I got more and more DMs from people like juniors saying, "Oh, your admission content was really useful." Some parents messaging me saying like, "Oh, can you help me coach my kid and get them into med school?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do a little bit of that." And then, but the bulk of the people messaging me were like either batchmates or seniors who were also going through it and suffering in the system. They're like, thanks for speaking out about this, because a lot of us live in fear, and you know, you're always scared. Like, what if I speak out and there's repercussions? My department sees this, MOH sees this, maybe they want to like fire me or something. So of course, I was very careful to present a very like nuanced and like well researched things. Like if I wanted to state statistics about like, oh, people are quitting, people are like burning out, I would Google and make sure the stats are like from MOH's website or like, you know, like in Parliament, you know, so that people won't see I'm just yapping baselessly and making noise for the sake of it. Yeah. So I guess from then, after housemanship, I worked a few more months as a medical officer. I broke my bond to the tune of like $500,000, but yeah, we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, there's gonna be a financial and
Yes.
navigating your 20s in a
Mhm.
I guess personal finances and career. We will have that as a theme at some point in time.
Yeah. Then so after leaving, I tried working as a full-time GP for a while. Didn't like the restrictiveness of it. I ended up as a locum. I tried setting up my own clinic with a few other co-founders for a while. That didn't work out, but it was a story I can't share for legal reasons. And then yeah, so since then it's been back to working as a locum GP. Yeah, I think I mean I feel like all of us push ourselves a bit too hard in life sometimes, or we're too hard on ourselves. We're like, I must do my best in the rat race. I must spend like my entire. I mean, honestly, we've all been studying. You've been studying hard for like law school, then med school, and I mean, even the years before that, all that effort and all those years of our life, like what does it lead to in the end? Like if we can't pursue all these other side quests, like for those of us who don't equate our identity with our, you know, our career as doctors. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, right? Which is that when you ask people from our parents' generation,
Mm-hmm.
they always have a key identity, and the key identity is always their job, right?
Yeah,
Like this
almost,
person
yeah,
was a
almost always,
teacher,
right? Yeah.
accountant. Then even more so, right? In
Mm.
that generation, they were always tired, like even secondary school. You know what? The guys like
Yeah,
some cat's boy
yeah,
who
there's
is
like a
now a
PR,
civil
like a
servant.
refusion in, now he became a PM or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like,
And
oh, that person's a doctor, they're very good. That person's a lawyer,
yeah.
very smart. And then straight away, if you're like some other less conventional job, they're like, cannot study, or oh, what kind of job is that?
Yeah, I know, right? And I
Yeah.
think one thing that's been really good in our generation is that people are there's the line between what is a side
Mm.
quest and what is a main hustle or side
Yeah.
or main quest kind of gets quite blurry.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a factor of the job market,
Mhm.
right? You know, there's a lot of other things you can do, but there's also a lot of uncertainty. And in many ways, that kind of was my journey into medicine as well, because it
Yeah.
feels like, you know, you're a great student and you studied hard and you went straight to med school, and your parents must be very proud of you, right?
Yeah, but what possessed you to go into, okay, so what inspired you to go into law school? And then what like possessed you to go into medicine after that?
So chronologically, what was so uninspiring that made me to go into law school in the first place was that I was just like any other art student in JC, as all Singaporean kids in JC who do not think about their future do. If you do arts, you think about either law or business. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I think
True.
this generation of 18, 19-year-olds are a lot wiser than that, which is good. Okay, but
Thankfully.
that was on my
that was our generation, yeah.
right, and which tells you kind of the gap we're already.
Yeah, we are
Okay?
old.
No 6, 7 or any of that
Yeah.
stuff. But at that point in time, I just thought that, I'm an art student. My friends are studying law. I had this dream of going abroad to study, and let's just do it. That was literally the entire thought process. I think there was a period in my head in NS where I wanted to, get a scholarship, go to the US, whatever. But then someone told me there was this thing called the SATs I had to take. That I was like, okay,
yeah.
so yeah, the helmet's on my brain and the brain is sitting at home, so that's all right. But that was literally as simple as the story got.
Wait, so did you like ever do like legal internships or like think about why law
No,
and not something else?
not for a moment. Imagine that, right? Like you study so hard and you use so much brain power
Yeah.
on your econs essays, but you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
actually think about that question.
Yeah, true, right? We don't have the bandwidth. It's always just like, okay, it's the next milestone. You're just rushing. You never have time to sit and think about like what do we want in life? What suits our personality the best?
Exactly. And I can trace that feeling all the way back to even in JC. Like I don't know if this how much of a shared experience this is, but I remember being very swamped by CCA milestone. Then you have like a JC1 exam, and then another CCA milestone, and then it's like prelims, A-levels,
yeah,
right?
and then prelims,
Right.
and then if you're a girl, you have to start applying for uni already, like all the overseas unis, and after that,
Yeah.
it's the end.
No, and that's crazy. Like as a guy who didn't like to think about my future, I found it inconceivable to even think about studying for my A-levels. But that would have been the period you were thinking about medicine for the first time. So what was going through your head?
No, honestly, so I remember the biggest culture shock. So I was okay. So let's go all the way back to like primary school. I ended up in RGPS GEP. So that was already the start of like the rat race intensifying. And then after that, when you go to RGS, like I remember my first week of school, there was this girl who was just like, I need to start preparing my portfolio so I can get into an Ivy League school. I was like, girl, what's a portfolio? I was like, what's a CV? I didn't even know what was going on, but like, I mean, that already set the tone for like the next couple of years. I was like, okay, everyone else is competing so hard already. We're only 13. So I was like, I just have to get on this train because if I don't, then I'm going to get left behind. And then if I decide I want to do something big with my portfolio in future, then if I have no portfolio, I'm screwed. So yeah, so that's how it led to med school because I mean science stream obviously. Yeah, I was like in JC I was BCME, biochem, math, econs. That's like the typical med student, aspiring med student thing. And I was in Interact Club, which is also where all the aspiring medical students go to get community hours and to prove that they really love helping people. I mean, we do. Don't get me wrong. We love helping people, but like it has to be a bit performative to some extent, right? To show that you've cut your hours, you've earned your stripes. Yeah. So basically, and then a lot of us did job shadowings in hospitals just to show that we are really dedicated and we've thought about this for like many years leading up to it. But in retrospect, did we really think about it, or was it just like we were taking this milestone like, okay, I need to get a job shadowing so I can get in, but instead of thinking, do I really want to get in? Do I want med school? Do I want some other path in life? Yeah. So what was that like for you when you decided you wanted to go to postgrad med?
That was a whole journey. Before we go into it, I thought it was really interesting you brought up that nuance about the journey to get into med school in the first place, because I mean all these experiences are supposed to be experiences where I go and serve a community, right? Like I go to old folks home and then I find out and discover whether I really like being with the elderly with health problems. But it feels like in this day and age, by the time you hit that, you are already striving for something.
Yes.
Right. And that's something I've seen in a lot of my students, because as with the kinds of things I do, I still work quite actively with students and all that. We do have competitors or other people in the market who they do explicit like university prep kind of courses, right? Like do your SATs in the US, do your LNETs and your BMATs for the UK, things like that. But actually the majority of the students I work with are even younger, because we thought that actually, right, if you want to even get them to have a semblance of autonomy or agency or ownership over their own journeys, you need to hit them much younger. And you realize that you already have these 15, 14-year-olds who say, okay, I want to get into medicine. 80% of the people who we ask what they want to do, if they're from science, they say medicine, right? And I think a lot of the work that I've done in education is to help try and ask them, have you considered something else? The path might still be medicine, the path still might be law, it might still be business or whatever it is you want. But I think a lot of it is getting them to go out there and experience for the sake of experiencing, which is things that I wish we both had when we were at that age, right?
Yeah, it's like I wish. I mean, it's not saying that our parents hothouse us, but I mean society just hothouse us, right? By virtue of the school that we're in, or like the people surrounding us. If everyone else is applying to med school, you don't question. You just go along with the flow because it's easy. I mean, like what 1/3 of Interact Club got into medicine in the end. So
not surprised. As I wander the halls of the hospital, I see so many old batchmates who I've never seen their face or saw their name in years. Then you like scroll the documentation. Then like oh this one.
You're like, I mean there were so many Raffles batchmates who like went overseas to study medicine. Then suddenly when you scroll, you're like, now they're doctors too. They all just came back.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And I guess that made my own journey that you asked about feel a little bit different because at that point in time, my entire circle, whether it's from secondary school or even in uni, obviously we're all humanities students in like a specific academic stream, right? And then that also means that later on in life, all of my friends ended up in different industries, be it consulting, banking, finance, government, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't have any doctor friends, like literally not a single one.
Because you were a humanities kid.
Yeah.
Fair.
And that by itself is, I don't know if that says something about the system that brings us up where, like, I don't know if you watch shows like Divergent, where you're a clan, right?
You've got your science faction, you've got the physics nerd faction, and you've got like the humanities and then the really artsy people.
Exactly. And I think when I was thinking about medicine in the first place, I was coming at it from a point of view of actually I don't see myself doing law for the rest of my life because I'd done a few internships by then, obviously seen nothing much of the real industry, but I think at that point it was enough to tell me that actually this is not what I want to spend the most of my career doing, whether it's in the end goal in 50 years or is in the day-to-day, M&A agreements or going to court, fight a case, right? Like, I mean, what especially made that decision clear for me was, I think funnily enough, I was honored to be around people who actually liked what they did. And that was very different from, when you're in JC, everyone just studies for A-levels for the sake of it.
No one has a choice.
Correct. And that made me realize that these people like what they're doing. They find this M&A agreement interesting.
Oh, like the lawyers actually really love that they're on fire for their job.
Exactly.
That's radical.
It's quite crazy, right? And that made me realize that, if I don't feel that way, maybe there's something else I could or should be doing. And funnily enough, I was considering two things at that point. Was either going to medicine or move to Bali or Thailand to be a dive instructor for the rest of my life. I do wear the occasional hat of being a diving instructor on some weekends, but thankfully, for the sake of my wallet, I went into one rather than the other. I went to some online forums actually. I was like, how much do dive instructors earn on? Then I inserted like all my favorite dive spots, right? And I was like, okay, this is gonna be a bit scary. So I decided to, instead of getting a lower paycheck, put myself into a 6-figure debt instead.
Smart choice.
Yeah, I'm obviously not coming into the financial team here as an advisor. I'm more a facilitator or a negative example, right? So
it's okay, me too. We have negative examples. We have wasted money.
The things we do is our adult money. We should have a separate episode.
Yeah, we will have that. We will cover that in the next episode, maybe.
And I think at that point, what really struck me about medicine was that I felt like, number one, on a day-to-day, I could really resonate with the things that some of them did, even after seeing the ugly side of things. Because you know what they say in most jobs, even the ones that you love, 90% of it will just feel like work, but you kind of stay for the 10%, whatever that 10% is, right? I mean, I've met people who love yoga, became yoga instructors, and then hated it after they... Right.
At least they tried it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was what rang true for medicine for me. I mean, this is not gonna be, this is my road to why medicine or whatever. So TLDR, I just thought that it was very human. And I thought that I could really have a platform to have, it's a privilege to have these difficult conversations, perhaps use my hands and really do, procedures and things like that can impact someone's lives in a very, very instant way, without too many T&Cs, no pun intended, in my past life. And that was that, right? So I walked that whole journey. I went to, after many difficult cold emails, finally scheduled some GP. I also did a bunch of other things like, do the volunteering and all that. I spent some time with the hospice actually, and I thought that
Oh.
it was really good work that they did because you kind of see what these patients are like in their primary care setting, which is home, right? And other than that, one thing that I found really interesting, which not a lot of people are going to get very surprised to hear, is that I feel like actually the way your brain approaches law and medicine is actually very similar. It's more similar than any other subject I've encountered. And
Oh, really? How so?
yeah, like I think because people always see law as like a humanities and medicine as a science, right? But what I'll say is that both are subjects that think very algorithmically.
Oh,
Okay,
really? Law things? I
very,
had no idea.
very. So it's like, like in medicine, you have like
Yeah,
stable, unstable, right?
yeah,
And then
stable,
after that,
unstable,
you
and then
go from there.
yeah, and then which system is it affecting? Which specialty
Exactly.
needs to see them?
Exactly. And for law, it's, I mean, if you think about, at least from a uni student's point of view, you learn about, okay, is this a crime? Okay, first of all,
Oh,
there's like 5 different criteria it meets within the definition of that crime. And
wow!
then if
I had
yes,
no
if
clue.
no, then if yes, if no, then you bring up like, certain cases or evidence to support it. And then within each of those branches of your decision making tree, there's a bit of uncertainty and a bit of reasoning, a bit of negotiating, right? So I thought that actually medicine scratched my brain in a very similar way. And I thought it was not bad. And what better way to have the outcome be than a real person instead of a M&A agreement?
Yeah. Instead of like
It's
a
not
giant corporation,
yeah,
at least it feels like like the whole starfish analogy, right? You're just helping one starfish, but it feels
exactly.
better than helping like the ocean in general.
Exactly. So that's what brought me into medicine after like a really long route. I mean, yeah, like it's not all doom and gloom, which is something I really enjoyed from the way you wrote about your career as well, right? Because you're not just yes, there was really bad bits of it, but I think there must be a reason you're still practicing medicine actively today. So what keeps you going, and what do you like about patient care?
Oh, so okay, honestly, so I went into medicine with my best friend, thinking that both of us would become psychiatrists. Actually, yeah, because both of us are like really into psychology, thinking about how people think, and we're like, oh, we really care about people's emotions and mental well, and like mental health. So in like my first 2 years, I was in a psychiatry like interest group. I was in the exco of that. We were writing papers. I was like just wholeheartedly gunning for psychiatry. But then I met family medicine, and I was like, oh my, this is what I can see myself doing. So I remember in like M3 during our clinical years, where we spend most of the time in like the wards, learning bedside tutorials and interacting with patients. I was like, okay, do I really see the rest of my life like doing ward rounds, working in a setting where everyone's like lying in bed sick, and I don't know. I mean, just being around people who are like that ill every day, kind of, I don't know whether it weighs on you, but like for me, I was like, oh no, I don't feel too well myself. Like I'm confronted with mortality every day. I'm like, there's some old person who's about to conk in front of me. I'm like, that doesn't feel too good. I
It's
wanted to
the
be like,
MRSA like worming its way into your brain.
and then everyone said you have to gown up, and yeah, the idea of spending my entire life doing ward rounds was a bit sian. Like it was a bit of a horrifying and boring thought. And then I remember during my internal medicine posting, there was a doctor. I shadowed her in a thyroid clinic. Then she was like, "Okay, there's 3 of you medical students. I've got 3 simple patients coming in, just hyperthyroidism." He said, "Okay, each of you take one patient." Then under her supervision, of course. And then when I got to sit down inside the clinic at the doctor's desk and typing the notes and asking the patient questions, I was like, "This is radical." Like something in my like I don't know, my rat brain or goldfish brain clicked. I was like, this is what I can actually see myself doing. Like, I enjoy clinic work. I did not enjoy ward work. So I was like, okay, yeah, I have found my new path. I didn't want to, I like stopped thinking about psychiatry already. It's like, you don't think about the guy after he's out of your life, right? So I was like, okay, psychiatry, bye bye. I'm like wholeheartedly locked in on family medicine or like, just clinic based work, which I mean, GP life is 100% attuned to that. So I feel like the reason why I could break my bond so early, or rather why I chose to, is because I had a clear career direction. I knew I didn't want to do a residency, and I didn't want to be put through like any more like calls and what when I knew that wasn't training in the area that I was interested in. Yeah, so I mean that's why I'm still working. I mean, I work part time these days as a locum. The flexibility gives me, time to explore all my other side quests. Yeah, which is I mean, our life shouldn't be all about just work. I mean, if we do have the privilege and financial stability to, I think it's more precious to spend time on the things that matter to you, or like the people that matter.
And no, I think I got a lot from that.
Mm.
Just even to inform my immediate career priorities in
Mm-hmm.
medicine, right?
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, truthfully, this is not just
Mm-hmm.
for legal reasons, but truthfully,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also figuring out where my medical career is going to go,
Mm-hmm.
even in the next 2 to 3 years,
Yeah, for sure.
because there's such a variety of work that you can
Mm-hmm.
do out there. Right now, I obviously am in the midst of that sit what work, right?
Yes.
Some parts of which are
Yeah.
great and some parts of which are not so great.
Yeah, some days you're just pure grinding and like just so you I mean to give our viewers an idea, like a ward rounds, you're literally just pushing this massive computer on wheels.
Mhm.
It's like table, you've got two massive screens or something and you're typing notes while pushing it, trying not to kill your consultant or run some poor nurse over. And then you just bounce around from patient to patient, 20 patients in one morning. It's an absolute grind some days, isn't it? And there's like no aircon in some wards. So you can imagine being on your feet for 3 4 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's some parts of it are painful, and
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm hearing, what I heard overall from you is also that you don't you have all the things that you have that give you meaning in life, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to up titrate and down titrate each
Yeah,
of them.
it's
It's not
all,
like you left
yeah,
medicine entirely,
yeah,
right? But it's having that right amount of it to keep
yeah.
you going
Mm-hmm.
across a year, across 5 years, across 10 years,
Yeah, it's all
and
about balance. So speaking of balance, how do you manage everything in your life?
so, well, that's I get asked that question quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Big plug to I'm not sponsored, but this Whoop band I'm wearing on my wrist over here,
Mm-hmm. Ah, yeah.
it tells me a lot. Okay, it tells me a
Mm-hmm.
lot about regulating, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess the answer is a lot of caffeine, not very healthy sleeping habits. But underneath all that, I feel as if one of my core principles for my life is that everything needs to be done for two reasons or more,
Mm-hmm.
like for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even I mean, sometimes there are obviously parts of my life that are segmented off from that.
Mm-hmm.
Friends and family will always just be friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
they're valuable for their
Yeah,
own
the
reasons,
intrinsic
right?
value is there.
Correct. But I think for
Mm-hmm.
everything else, right, like career decisions, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I thought about even going to medicine by
Mm-hmm.
itself, other than the pure, wow, I love it, want to help people, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. Okay, sorry if I sound very deep. Okay, I'm not, I
Mm-hmm.
promise, right? But other than that, there were a lot of hygiene factors at play over here,
Mm-hmm.
such as, in my 30s at least, it's going to be a grind, but is there at least one route within the many routes in this
Mm-hmm.
career where I end up a little bit more comfortable, or is there a fallback, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a stability that this career path gave me. I think the other thing that I guess could be a good example of this was why I would even bother to run whatever I do in education
Mm-hmm.
right now. Because I mean, okay, obviously my rent doesn't pay itself. That is an
Mm-hmm.
absolute like its own reason. But then
Yep.
above and all that, what I chose to do it for is that it's one of those things I've been doing for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that it could give me the professional development and growth that I was really craving. Because, if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
in medicine, the way you develop as a professional or as an individual
Mm-hmm.
is very confounded by how technical it is, because
Mm-hmm.
you spend so many years just knowing how to manage diseases, right? and
Yeah.
and rightfully so,
Mm-hmm.
to all everyone who's ever seen a doctor, there's a lot of effort put into making sure that we don't kill people.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, that also means that we don't do a lot of the softer things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
managing projects, like
Mm.
interacting with clients, or
Yeah.
doing organizational problem solving.
Mm.
And I think that's one of those things that really interests me as well.
Mm.
And knowing that, okay, I have this other parallel skill and a setting, an environment in which I can realize some of these goals, be it going from just an operator to a junior manager at my previous company,
Mm-hmm.
to, I guess, starting my own thing, experimenting
Mm-hmm.
without having to, come up with an entirely new core skill. Like some people
Yeah.
sell t-shirts, some people
Yeah.
want to sell F&B, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I cannot mix a drink to save my life, neither
Yeah.
can I cook that well. So I have this so-called skill of something on my CV somewhere, and I thought, yeah, let's go into it. So that serves, I suppose, not just a financial reason, but actually, like, the truth of the matter is I barely earn any money from it right now,
Yeah.
shamefully. But really what keeps me going at it is the sense of professional fulfillment I get from it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the dream is that maybe you share this as well, that some point down the road, these skills from the different worlds that we inhabit eventually converge in something.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a firm believer in the whole jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, obviously, if I wanted to be a master, I'll be a resident right now, training in a specialty. But I think that didn't scratch the right set of itches for me. I don't really crave like exams and be an expert in like one subject field, because I feel like because of all the time and effort spent in doing that, you neglect all the other cool skills that you could pick up along the way. Like, I mean, as you say, management or like business, getting to meet people. I feel like once you're in medicine, it's actually very insular. Like you can be like the top cardiologist, but if you ask them something about, I don't know, diving, okay, I mean, maybe some of them do dive, but like, I mean, why do I want to lock myself into one box so early on in life? Yeah, so I'm also all for just upskilling. Like, if you view life as a video game, we're just collecting stats in many different aspects rather than some people who just want to upskill in the intelligence aspect or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that even when you do meet these people, they kind of give you a lot of perspective as well, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's like the
it's like
contrast. It's
correct,
like this is
correct,
what our
correct,
lives could have been if we chose
correct.
that path, and then this is our path. But I mean, we can all
Correct.
still be friends. And it's
Yeah,
still cool.
and professionally, you do need these people in
Yeah,
your network.
100%. Yeah, as a
Yeah.
GP, I can't tell you how many times I had to refer to specialists.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
And I mean, even from hobbies, I feel
Mm.
like I've learned a lot that I can apply in my professional life.
Mhm.
Like okay, like diving, right?
Mm.
I do teach some courses on the weekends.
Mhm.
Every now and then, it's purely volunteer basis,
Oh,
unfortunately.
oh my god.
It's fun. It's fun.
Oh, you really love unpaid labor and lowly
Yes,
paid labor.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I live off unpaid labor.
Yeah.
But what I thought was really fun and really informative about that whole
Mm.
process was that the way I was taught to teach diving
Mm.
taught me a lot about how to educate students and
Oh,
children
how
who
so?
learn with me, because if you draw parallels, right,
Mm.
diving is something that is very, very methodical, right?
Mm.
Like there are certain things you
Yeah,
kind of
there's
have
like
to do when
all the
you are
checks.
underwater, right?
Yeah.
Things that help you breathe,
Mm.
that's
Mhm.
kind of not good to miss. But like how we teach is often through a lot of reinforcement,
Mhm.
through a lot of repetition, but
Mhm.
also through a lot of choosing a focus. Because with every, like, let's say every time you jump in the water, especially as a beginner, there's 10,000 things you will not do so well, right? Like some equipment will be dangling, you will not be moving as optimally as you should, you might have made a mistake, you might have navigated wrongly, but like every interaction or encounter has a key takeaway that you want to hammer home to the learner.
Mhm.
And I kind of brought a lot of that into the way that I teach in a more academic sense, or even mentor in a more non-academic sense. And I see a lot of these features in, even if you take the other world which we inhabit, which is healthcare, I see a lot of these features in the best clinical teachers that I've encountered as well, right? Like they're the ones who don't just like go like, why, this other drug like with the has a slightly better renal clearance rate, and then they just miss the whole plot, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, all with side quests and main quests, they all converge on the same character. And I think, hopefully as we talk more in our other episodes, we'll bring on a lot of people who have all of their big projects, whether they are Intelligence 100, Athletic 100, and we'll learn a little bit more from them. I think today we talked so much about, we did a throwback to JC, man.
Yeah, we literally just like recapped our whole lives and how we got here. So yes, thanks for listening to us yapping, and we've got many exciting guests planned for you.
Yeah, we talked about where it all started. I guess whether or not we admit it, the main identifier, professional identifier, is always that little healthcare thing that we have going on. It comes from so many factors, be it cultural, be it social, when we are that age. And I guess across the years, you kind of learn, and as you start becoming a more sentient being into your 20s, you get these reflections. And hopefully, if you're watching this from somewhere in your teen years, or somewhere in your 50s, or somewhere from across the world, maybe some of these mistakes will be relatable to you too. So see you next time on We Didn't Plan This.